What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we'll be going over Dunder methods in Python. So what are Dunder methods? Dunder methods, which stands for double underscore, also known as magic methods, are methods that we don't directly call ourselves, but they're used to overload a function that's already built in Python. A very common example is the add Dunder method. So actually, let's take a look at this. So we're back at our school class. And like I mentioned, there's a Dunder method for add. So you may think of add as, let's just create a variable 3 and then b is 8. So when we want to add these numbers, all we do is a plus b, right? Well, this plus here is actually a Dunder method. It is the same thing as doing a dot double underscore add double underscore and then b. This is what's really happening when you put the plus operator. So the plus operator is overloading this add method. This is a Dunder method. Okay? So I'm going to print 11 in the console here. And let's get rid of these lunch numbers. So this is Dunder method. Another method, Dunder method, is init or initialize. So like I mentioned in our first video, initialize is getting invoked whether you call it or not. So you don't have to put initialization here, but we're overloading the initialization method that's built into Python. So it accepts the first name, last name, arguments. So just know that Dunder methods overload. We'll talk more about overloading in our next video, but let's actually put this to use. So in our school class, if you remember in our first video, we printed out the student object and it wasn't very pretty. So let's do that again. Let's print out student 1. And all is it going to do is it's going to print out the something named student object at this memory address. And that's not very readable to us. But there's a way to make it readable, and that's to use a Dunder method or a magic method. So let's actually keep this print student 1 here, and let's create a Dunder method. So we've already created initialize. That's one Dunder method. Now, to create an actual representation or readable representation of this object, we can use the representation Dunder method. And to do that, we do define double underscore REPR, which stands for representation, and then double underscore, and then self, just like initialize. And all we're going to do is we're going to return what we think a readable representation is of the object. So I'm going to return a string that says self.firstname. Whoops. I'm going to put the F here. So self.firstname. And then self.lastname of the school class. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a Dunder method or a magic method. And this is going to be a string representation of the object. So instead of this unreadable code string that this printed out in the console, we're going to create our own representation. And what that representation is going to print out the first name and the last name of the school class. Let's try this. Let's print out student 1 now. And now it says John Doe of the school class. We can do the same thing for, let's do teacher 1. So now it's going to say Bill Nye of the school class. Okay? So we can do this on all of our objects that are here from the school class, as well as if we add a school object itself. So now, representation is a string representation of the object, but there's actually a more useful, a more direct method when we want to create string representations of objects, and that is the string Dunder method. So you've probably used the string method before. If we have just a variable here called a, this is equal to 18, we can turn this into a string by using print str. Right, so this would just be 18 as a string. But that is actually a Dunder method. str right here, this is a Dunder method. So we can use that. We can overload that in our classes. So let's actually do that right now. So let's define a Dunder method called str, just like we showed. And let's return. Let's do something similar to what we did here. Let's just copy this and let's just put out string representation of their name. So now you may be wondering, we have a representation Dunder method and we have a string method. Which one is it going to do? Is it going to print out one or the other? Well, it is actually. So what it's going to do is it's going to print out the string one. So it's going to print out a string representation of Dunder. Now, why is it doing that? Well, representation, this is really a base. This is really called if there is no string representation. So first it'll look at for a string representation. Then if there's none, then it'll look for this representation Dunder method. Okay. So we actually can, like I said, since it's a Dunder method, it's just a method that we can use. So we can actually do this and use the representation method. And this will print it out. So Dunder of the school class, that's the representation method. And then without it, it will just print out the string representation. But let's actually get into the actual use of representation. So in addition to it being a fallback for the string, in case there's no string Dunder method, representation is more like the machine reading the output. So think about it. If this is what the string Dunder method is, what we want humans to be able to do. This is a human representation. Now, this representation Dunder method, it's not exactly like this memory address object thing that we saw at the beginning. This is more like something that you could copy and paste and it'll be valid Python code. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's do this. So just think about it. When we call the school, when we create a school object, we pass the name school and then we put in the parameters. So that's pretty much what we want to do with the representation. We want to do school and then we want to pass the parameters. So that first thing. So this is literally the representation, the representation of the object in Python code. So that's actually what we want. So this is very useful for debugging. So that's a good reason why representation Dunder method is used for debugging. String is really just a string representation of the object. So let's run this. Let's go to print school, and I forgot the comma. So school. So now this is literally what we would put if we were declaring a school object, instantiating the school object. So that's why we use representation. We can actually improve this. So instead of putting school, let's actually put the name of the class in terms of code. So let's actually use Dunder methods. Let's do self dot, I believe it's double underscore class, yep, and then dot underscore name. So all we're doing here is we're getting the class name using Dunder methods. So this gets this is class, this is the name of the class, and we're just doing the same thing, except if we change the name of the class, if we change this to something else, it will update here instead. So we don't have to search for this and change the name. So now let's run this, and it does the same thing, except it's more maintainable. Okay. So that's the difference between representation and string. I hope that makes sense. If you did learn something about magic methods and /Dunder methods, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. In our next video, we'll be going over method overloading. We touched on that a little bit with the string, but we'll go more into depth in our next video. So make sure to check that out. And I hope to see you in the next one. Take it easy.